All right, welcome back, Prospect Live viewers and listeners. We are back with another 2021 MLB Draft Show. I, of course, am your host, Ralph Lifshitz, and I am joined by the newly anointed MLB Draft content lead at Prospect Live, my co-host, Joe Doyle. Congratulations on the promotion, Joe.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Absolutely. So we just released the top 150. And of course, we've expanded out the list, the goal, and something that we will do. It's going to happen. We're going to build out to 500. We already have, I think, more than 500 names available. It's just a matter of parsing through, doing our due diligence, our I guess scouting, I'll call it, because this year we obviously can't get out to the field the same way that we could in previous years. But certainly doing our due diligence just in terms of research and understanding of who these players are, watching games, talking to evaluators, talking to folks within the program, sometimes talking to the player as well, like we did with Jaden Hill. Go and watch that interview if you haven't. It's down there on our Prospect Live feed. One of our better interviews, I'd have to say. I love talking with Jaden.
Hell of a kid.
But we have the 150 coming out. We're going to be parsing it out, even further. 200 will probably be coming, I'd say, within a few weeks to a month. And we'll just keep on going 50 by 50 and add more for you. But I think we're going to talk about some of our favorite players that we ended up covering and writing up in this 150, players that were added to the board. Some of them within the top 100 even, because we did change our ranks as well. We've had a lot of events. We've had East Coast Pro. We've had area code games and others. So we've had a lot more looks. We have WWBA as well, I think, since the last time we technically did the rankings, but I might be wrong on that. So
no, I think you're right.
I've done a lot of talking. I'm going to kick it over to you. Let's talk some 150, guys.
All right, man. Yeah. So I thought, the biggest thing that I was trying to parse out in this last 2 or 3 week period is I was trying to differentiate between some of these college outfielders, because it's really turning into, a kind of a college outfield show here in the first round. You might be looking at 6 to 8 guys on campus that could end up, being a first round pick. And so with, Colton Cowser and Levi Usher, Christian Franklin, all these different names, I wanted to kind of hone in on who I thought was the best talent. So that's what I dug into, and we'll get into the prep guys here in a minute. But I want to talk a little bit about Ethan Wilson. He's kind of my guy. He's kind of my college outfielder in this class. I think the tape that I watched from him, from the games against Vanderbilt in this early 2020 season, they were pretty spectacular, man. The barrel velo that he gets and the outfield arm that he's got, the loft that he has in his swing. I mean, I think he's the best college outfielder in the class, if you ask me right now. I mean, he hit 17 home runs his freshman year, which, I get that it's like the Sun Belt, but dude, that's no small feat. What do you think? You got a favorite from this class, or you got any thoughts on Wilson?
Yeah, Wilson is a guy that I had definitely moved up the board a little bit. And I think I was apprehensive, just somewhat, based off of it being, sort of a mid-major player that I didn't have a ton of history on. But the more I dug into the player, watched him and realized that he does have a role as an everyday outfielder. Those skills I had significantly underrated. And he was the Sun Belt Conference, freshman of the year and player of the year, as a freshman, obviously. Lefty bat, he's 6'2", 205. It's a strong athletic build. And he's had the production behind it. And, he showed well, I think early in this season as well. I think you actually mentioned this in our blurbs, but against Vanderbilt. So, he's one of those guys that it was tough for me, I think, initially, but we're learning more and more about this class every day. And, I think there's a lot more mystery with this class. So some of these rankings are way more fluid than they have been previously. So he's a player that I do like quite a bit. But you said a hitter, so I'm going to say a pitcher. But I have a guy in this class that I love. I think I actually had him ranked 2 or 3 on my board, which is one of the reasons he's in our top 10 now. And that is 6'7" right-hander out of Calvary Christian Academy down in Florida. That's Andrew Painter. It's a real easy delivery. I know he doesn't get a ton of extension. There's some things about his setup that I think maybe analytical teams might shy away from a little bit, but I'm not even so sure about that, because he kind of is who he is. I think he uses his body and his athleticism to good use. But, this is a guy that has, 4 pitches. He commands them well. The fastball has spin on it. He works well with the fastball up in the zone. It's got some giddy up at 96, 97. And for me, when I'm looking at a guy like that, that's 6'7", isn't, he's a strong build. He's an athletic build, but he's not incredibly filled out.
No.
I don't think he's going to lose that velocity, because we know in these showcase showings, guys are going 3 innings, 2 innings, an inning even, and they can bump up the heater a lot, right, from what it would actually play over the course of a 5 to 6, 7 inning start. I think Painter's a guy that's economical enough with his pitches. He has the clean mechanics and the physicality that it all just sort of blends together. He's my favorite prep pitcher in the class, one of my favorite players in the class. And what I had seen on East Coast Pro, and sort of that feed, he looked tremendous. I was a really, really big fan, and the stuff is behind it. I'll say, just in terms of like a personal favorite, though, another arm here. I like Steve Hadger a lot. I think we've talked about that before. There's certainly some things that he can improve, but it's really a matter of him holding velocity for longer than an inning or two, when he's sitting 94, 95 and then drops down to 91 to 88. But he has the stuff, and he's still young enough, relatively, young for the class as well. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Hadger. Plus, he's a local Massachusetts guy, and I bump up my New England prep prospects a little bit.
Yeah.
Any guys that are falling for you right now?
Well, I want to hit really quick on Hadger, just
Sure.
as kind of a sidebar. I think Kumar Rocker probably has the best pitch in the draft in his slider. I mean, probably, if you ask us today, Hadger's slider might be the second best pitch in this class. It's a wipeout slider, and you're right. If he can, keep pumping 94, 96, 4 or 5 innings, he's going to be a really high pick. As far as guys that are falling for me, we're still just at that point now where I think, we're just seeing more high school guys than we are college guys, and nobody's really proving not to be that dude. I think the one guy that's just fallen marginally, and it's just marginal, by no means have I given up on him, is, Brady House took a little bit of a dip for me. And that's just because this has been his first opportunity to face big velo, to face big secondary stuff in the 17U bracket. And he hasn't really held his own at WWBA and East Coast, Air Code games. So I do want to see a little less swing and miss from him moving forward. If he's going to be that 55, 60 hit, 70 plus raw power guy, I'd like to see him get on base against some of these better arms. So he's fallen for me a little bit. Some other guys that have fallen for me, I would say that Robbie Martin has taken a little bit of a fall. I watched his tape compared to the Levi Ushers and the Christian Franklins, and I think there's a little bit more left to be desired in the Robbie Martin bat than some of these other guys. So he's slipped a little bit, but not much. I think he only moved down a couple spots in our rankings, and Brady House only moved down into the still the front half of the first round at 14 or 15. So these guys aren't falling. They're not tumbling that much. It's just a matter of getting enough looks. What about you?
Yeah, and I think there's some guys that just on raw skills, especially within the prep class, we had a better understanding of what they were doing because they were out there earlier than a lot of these wooden bat leagues were. Then the wooden bat leagues happen. We've seen some guys show out. They've moved up a little bit. We've heard and gotten data behind the scenes from some of our connections on guys like maybe a Gunnar Hoagland, who's moved up a lot. Even a James Wood, who he'd moved up a lot with some good performances. Of course, at area codes, he wasn't as strong. I guess, in terms of guys that have moved down a little bit for me, certainly Robbie Martin. I don't think I was as high on Robbie Martin as others were to begin with. But a couple kind of funny ones, guys that I think that could actually probably bump up and regain some of their pedigree. Braylon Bishop being one, who's actually probably gotten better throughout the summer, even though we dropped him. I don't think this speaks highly of our interviews, but a couple of guys that we've interviewed, and Benny Montgomery. I still love the tools. I love Benny, and just the guy talking to him. I think if you go back and you watch that interview, you can see how mature the kid is. He's really got a great head in his shoulders, and he's got off the chart sort of skills. Now, conversely, he still struggles to hit, and the swing is unorthodox to say the least. And I think that hurts him a little bit. Another guy is like Jay Allen's moved down a little bit. Good player. I think he's very talented. I could certainly see Jay Allen, going in the comp round somewhere around there still. And that's sort of how we have him ranked. But, once again, on the other side with Allen, I haven't been like overwhelmingly impressed the way I have been with Wood or some of these other guys, just in terms of their total performance. I know Alex Mooney dropped a little bit. I don't think that's so much Mooney's fault.
No.
As much as it's just sort of other guys in the class that we're getting more familiar with and we're moving up. There's some other guys that we sort of got a better look at, at Area Code and East Coast Pro and at WWBA. Then we did just at PG National, and I think that's a big part of it. Another guy that had moved down, Christian Little, who I actually thought performed pretty well when I watched him at Area Code Game. Same thing, not Area Code Games, but when I watched him at East Coast Pro. Breaking ball looked a lot better. But I think we had him ranked, at least I had him ranked relatively high on my initial list. And I think, when we look back on sort of our initial rankings, that was very much sort of like a follow list, and then this is the word of the day, but then you parse out things, you start to learn things about players, and, you start to put guys into sort of boxes and categories and buckets and say, all right, this guy's here, this guy's here, this guy's a lot better than I thought he was. I've seen multiple good performances. I just wasn't as familiar. So we're learning, And then there's one other guy I also wanted to bring up that's also another guy that we interviewed. That's Maddox Bruns. The stuff is unbelievable. I think BA kind of jumped the hype train a little bit when they put him as the second best player in the class. I don't think he ever was that, and that's no knock on Maddox Bruns. No. He's shown an inability to pound the strike zone in a way that's going to make him effective. That doesn't mean that he has to be a guy that throws, 90% strikes or anything like that. But he really struggles at times. But I know he's got the big velocity from the left side and all that. But he's a guy that kind of needs to tighten it up in terms of his attack plan. One other guy I wanted to bring up that was a huge mover in our list was Khalil Watson.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about him with Vinny last week. He seems to be a guy that's sort of ascending up the ranks just in terms of what his ability is, etc. By the way, he's listed as 5'1" on our top 150. I don't think he's 5'1".
I think I forgot a 0. No, I think you're right, man. Khalil Watson, he's probably the third or fourth best shortstop in this class. The guys at Perfect Game have nothing but good things to say about this kid. And the more and more you dive into his tape, the more you kind of see what everyone's talking about. I don't have many things to say about Watson in terms of, what I want to see more of. The barrel speed for a guy that's only 5'1" is amazing. On the flip side of that, this, we've talked about this. This is such a strong prep shortstop class that, a couple guys have kind of fallen out of favor just because there's so many dudes in front of them. I think Drake Varnado has kind of fallen a little bit. He started off in the 40 range for us, 40 to 50 range. And he's yet to have a spotlight highlight performance at any of these events. I think there's some questioning the hit tool at this point. So he's kind of fallen away. And then the other guy that we actually had in almost the top 40 at number 40 is Noah Smith. We both loved Noah Smith at PG National. I really liked what I had to see, but he's kind of fallen down into that, top 100 area. And so I'd like to see him kind of pop again because I'd like him to be up in the ranges, in the 40s and 50s, but he's another guy to watch. Who was the guy? The two guys that I wanted to talk about, and I know this is a bias, and I do not care. The two guys I want to talk about are the two Pacific Northwest kids who just continue to
Malachi
ascend.
Knight. I knew this was coming.
Malachi Knight is now almost in our top 50. He's up 8 more spots up to 53.
And then Max DeBeck, who has been getting some smoke around being a potential late first round arm, maybe a comp round A type top 40 pick. He's up 16 spots to number 55. Two guys burgeoning on the top 50. We've talked to Vinny and we've talked to Sikowski, and they both think DeBeck might be the third best arm in this class. Potentially, it's still early behind guys like Painter and Petty. So I'm really excited to see him. He's cut from the exact same cloth as Andrew Painter in that he is a huge righty with big stuff, 96, 97, 6'7", 200. And that's DeBeck. So the only question surrounding him really at this point is, can he continue to throw that changeup and hone it into an average pitch, and the mechanics. And the mechanics have improved at every stop. So those are two guys I'm really excited about. I mean, they're Pacific Northwest kids, but they're moving up the charts pretty quick. A couple guys I want to talk about from the college side that I think need mentioning, because we've been able to watch as much prep talent as we want at these showcases. But the more and more you dive into what these kids are doing at, Northwoods and Grand Park and some of these other, leagues, Ryan Cusick and Carson Seymour. These guys, I know it's in short stints, but both of them hit 98 over the last 3 weeks. So listen, this is a league of stuff. And as Bobby Miller showed last year, if you're touching 98 at K-State or Wake Forest, you're gonna be in the top 40 conversation. I know that you've had a good chance to catch. I think Cusick, you've seen a good chance, a good bit. What are your thoughts on those two guys?
Yeah, Cusick in particular is a guy that I saw in high school. Actually, one of my good friends. One of the guys that I had really gotten sort of into scouting and prospects with was his initial high school coach for the first 3 years of his career. So I was somewhat familiar. But I think the thing with Cusick that has moved him up the rankings a lot is he's really tightened up a lot, just in terms of his ability to pound around the strike zone. The stuff is starting to actualize again. He's using his body. Another big part of it is Wake Forest does an excellent job in terms of developing pitchers and the stuff that's sort of behind there. And they've done a great job of sort of plucking some of these talented, raw specimens, so to speak, from the Northeast and turning them into something. Jared Schuster is a perfect example.
Yeah.
And I think the thing with him is he's got a good slider, he's got a pretty good changeup, and I think he can work both. The big question with him, like I said, is just the stuff maintaining, which I think it will, and continuing to throw strikes and work around the zone, and how advanced his sequencing and really pitchability sort of becomes. And I think he can get there. That's one of the guys that, kind of gets a boost, even though he's a college guy, because he's a cold weather guy.
Right.
He only has a couple of years experience on the circuit, but he wasn't bad in the Cape last year either. So, I'm interested to see what Cusick brings sort of next spring if we have full go on baseball and all that sort of stuff. At least we know Wake Forest baseball program won't be canceled.
Yeah.
But and then what was the other arm that you had mentioned? Was it
Seymour? Carson Seymour out of K-State.
Yeah, I had saw Seymour as well. The previous summer with Harwich. He was in relief. I mean, he hit 98 in the gun in some short spurts. Pretty good downer curveball. That was mostly what his secondary was. He'll mix in a changeup every so often. I don't know what to make of him so much. I liked him coming into the draft last year. I think at one point he might have been my highest Seymour. And then Ian sort of started to tick up throughout the season. And we saw sort of the final iteration of Seymour from the guy that we saw as a sophomore to, the summer going into his junior year down the Cape, where he pitched relatively well, but I wouldn't say it was a huge standout by any means. And then the guy that came out at VT and really started to miss a lot more bats and analytically had changed some things with his release point, etc. And obviously that changeup being like a 7 pitch. So Ian moved ahead of Carson, but Carson's raw stuff is really tantalizing. He's got the body. He's a big body right-hander. He's a Cowie kid, but almost in sort of that Texas sort of
Bulldog way.
Prototype. Yeah, like that
yeah.
sort of prototype way. I kind of wonder about the secondaries a little bit. He does mix, I think, a slider as well, but it's mostly curveball. And it's a matter of the fastball playing up. Now, I haven't seen him. I know some folks in our team, like James Weiser and Diego Solares, have both seen him in the Northwoods League this year and had great things to say about him. So they might be better guys to necessarily hit up about it. But he's moved into the top 40. He's squarely at 40.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's a guy that I think can probably hold serve. I don't know if he moves up that many spots. I think this is somewhat ceiling for me with Seymour, but once again,
well, he needs ball. He needs to pitch to move much higher, because there's only so high pure velo, pure gas can get you in terms of rankings without showing that you can deploy it.
Agreed. With some of the players in front of him,
Yeah. Another thing that I kind of wanted to hit on that a lot of people kind of in our circles have been talking about that I think is a good conversation piece is the University of Florida's pitching, and how here you go. Here's one more. How the University of Florida is going to parse out the innings for the amount of guys that they're going to be throwing out there. I mean, they've legitimately got, you could make the argument that they have seven guys that are top 2 round talents that need to get innings. I mean, we look at who we're talking about here. We got Hunter Barco, who's 2022. You got Tommy Mace, who's probably going to be in the first 2 or 3 rounds next year. You got Jack Leftwich, same deal. Andrew Painter probably won't get to campus. Neither will Chase Petty, but Philip Abner, Ben Specht, Christian Scott. I mean, these are all big arms. And it's an embarrassment of riches that Leftwich and Mace are returning to school.
Yeah, I mean, it is, it's going to be crazy in terms of, how they work in those innings. I mean, like their midweek rotation might be better than a lot of good teams, like potential regional teams, weekend starters, just in terms of like pure talent and stuff. So yeah, they're going to be interesting. Maybe they can field like an A and a B team like Barcelona does in the Primera League over in Spain, La Liga. Maybe there's a chance they could do that. I think they could have like a Florida A and a Florida B, and they could just schedule like mid majors to play Florida B. So all these kids
they'd still kill everyone.
It would be fun. Yeah, I mean, it would be fun. I'm sure they could probably get a couple of guys that are actual high school seniors to like graduate in January and join the team too. They always like to do that. So who knows? All right. Let's talk a couple more guys that we added to the list here, the top 50. We're going on just about a half hour. We're going longer than we thought we were going to, of course. But sort of give me 2 guys that you wrote up and added to the top 50 that you're excited about.
Specifically the 50 or top 150?
Well, the top 150, yeah.
Top 150. All right, let's see.
Someone that we wrote up this time around and was added to our list this time around.
One guy that I really like is at 146. He's a 6'5" righty out of Heritage Hall High School. Gray Thomas, extremely funky from the right side. A lot of moving parts, limbs flying all over the place. The ball just comes out of his belly button. It's a 3/4 sidearm delivery. Right now he's 92 to 94, brushing 95. It's a wipeout slider that I've seen a couple times at some Lake Point events that has really impressed me. I think it's squarely a 55 pitch right now that's flashed plus. The body, like I said, he's 6'5", 205, so there's a lot of body there. It's not how do you say this respectfully? It's not a firm body yet. He hasn't like grown into his body just yet. So I think there's more velo to come. I think this is a guy that could be, like 94 to 97 at the next level with a slider and a usable changeup. He gives me kind of an Adam Ottavino vibe, except with more moving parts. So I don't know what his role is. I'm looking forward to seeing more of him. He's going to be a PG All-American this year, so we'll get to see him in September. So that's one that really stands out for me. Another one that I want to point out is Pete Hansen. He's a lefty out of Texas. We hadn't included him in the top 100, but he was really close. And he's kind of built from that same cloth of, he's not like the short righty that you love. He's actually a lefty, I should say, but he's only 6'2", 200. He's that guy that has the stuff that sneaks into the first round because he can just pitch. He's 90 to 93, touches 94. He's got the changeup, he's got the slider. Both of them have flashed, average or better at times, especially the slider. Both in the low 80s, top of the scale type command as far as college goes. You're talking about like 55, 60 command. But he just understands how to pitch. He knows how to attack batters. And so I think you're talking about like a 4-5 at the next level. But we talk about guys like Ryan Rollison and we talk about guys like Marco Gonzalez that have this prototype package when they're drafted in the first round because it's safe. And that's, what a lot of teams target in that first round is an assured thing. So David Peterson kind of to a lesser degree. So I like Pete Hansen a lot. Right now he's 123 on our list. And I think he's got an outside shot of cracking into that top 40.
Yeah, agree. So there's two arms here that I'll sort of stump for. One being left-handed pitcher out of Maryland, Mason Albright. I really, really like the deception. He's not huge, 6'1", but I think there's ability to sort of add some good weight just based on what his build is. And his fastball and sort of the way his arm action's almost Madison Bumgarner. He's very similar to Bumgarner in terms of what his mechanics are, but just sort of he kind of flashes the ball with that long arm action for a second, before he gets into his full delivery and pumps the ball and releases. He'll sit 93, 94, but I think the thing that I like about him most is his ability to sort of work east-west in terms of break with his fastball and his slider coming off of a similar tunnel where the fastball gets good arm side run. And the slider is really, really horizontal break. It's a high spin efficiency pitch. Some may even consider it to be a curveball because of how high the spin efficiency is on it. But it's a sweepy horizontal slider. So he's a guy that's going to be able to sort of pound to each side of the zone and really keep guys off balance. In addition to all of the way he hides the ball and does some of those things. So. I'm a big fan there. Another arm that I'm going to stump for a little bit too is James Peyton Smith. I wasn't as familiar with Smith. I had seen him pitch, I think, maybe once over the course of this summer. But the more I dug into him, he's got really wonky mechanics, really deep hip hinge, which I think sort of plays up his stuff. Low arm slot, really low release point. I think our own Nathaniel Plotz and his PG National impressions that he wrote up a couple of months ago, he had actually drawn some comparisons to Smith and Max Scherzer. I know I just gave a Madison Bumgarner comp and now a Max Scherzer comp, but I think when you see sort of the composition of these two players and how their mechanics and their pitches move and all that works, I think you'll sort of understand the wavelength that I'm on. But great feel for a changeup, shows really good ability to pronate. Don't love his slider, but it does have some strong characteristics in terms of spin and some of those things. Issue is the violent delivery and a serious head knock, head whack, whatever you want to call it. There are times that I wonder how this kid's neck feels the day after he pitches, But those are two guys that really stuck out for me. There were a lot of names that we added here, a lot of guys I think will move up, but I think both of those names should have a bullet on them.
I want to touch on one more before we call this thing. And
right.
he was a guy I forgot about that I think is going to end up a lot higher for me on the next ranking. That's Micah Dallas out of Texas Tech. Mm-hmm. Just because I love the arsenal that he brings to the table. He's a sinker cutter guy. He's got the changeup as well. He can control all of them. And the sinker is 94, 95. The cutter is 90 to 91. And the changeup is 83, 84. And sometimes the cutter can get a little slurvy, slidery that just fades away from righties. Mm-hmm. So I think that's maybe something that he can work on, actually developing that into a fourth pitch. But only got 15 innings this year. He struck out 23 guys and he issued 1 walk. 6'3", 205. You're already talking about a guy that's in the mid 90s. He's got 3 pitches that are all at least average. I think the sinker and cutter are probably a tick above. So he's certainly going to be an arm that I'm paying attention to next year, because in an era right now where we just don't have enough looks to like definitively say who is a first round guy. Mm-hmm. This is the type of guy that can pop for me, along with Christian Scott at Florida, into that top 20 range. So he's a big one.
All right. There we have it. We gave you lots of names to dig into. You got a whole 150 list now to read up on. And we'll be back with a very big interview and discussion coming on our next show. That is Jim Callis from MLB Pipeline. I'm excited to connect with Jim again. It's been a few years since I spoke with him.
Yeah.
But there you go. Joe, doing a good job of booking the guests over there. So everybody get in your hand. All right, Joe, any parting words here that don't have to do with parsing things out?
No, I'm going to be cliche. And if you got someone for the top 200, put them in the comments. Pound that subscribe button.
Wrong.
Yeah.
I like that. All right, listeners, viewers, thank you for tuning in for another week. We'll be back.